the dust devils spinning across the main street of Palisade. Colorado weren't half as dangerous as the look Zara Ashford's father gave her when she told him she couldn't marry William Thornton, even though every practical bone in her body screamed she should. It was late spring in 1878, and the mountain town had bloomed into something more than a collection of rough buildings clustered near the coal mines. Real houses now stood where tents once flapped, and the railroad had brought prosperity that changed everything. Her father's general store had expanded twice in as many years, and with success came expectations. The biggest expectation sat squarely on Zara's shoulders, wrapped in expensive promises and a velvet box containing a ring she hadn't yet accepted. "You're being foolish, girl," Harrison Ashford said, his weathered hands gripping the counter of his store. At 52, he'd built something from nothing, and he wanted his daughter to have security. "William Thornton is the wealthiest man in 3 counties. He owns the biggest ranch, has contracts with the railroad, investments in Denver. You'll never want for anything." Zara stared out the window at the mountains rising beyond town, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the warming season. "I know what he can offer, Papa." "Then why this hesitation? You're 22 years old. Most girls your age already have children." She turned to face him, her green eyes troubled. "Because I don't love him. I'm not sure I even like him much. He's arrogant and cold, and when he looks at me, I feel like I'm something he's purchasing, not someone he wants to know." Her father's expression softened slightly, but his resolve remained firm. "Love comes with time, Zara. Respect and partnership, that's what matters. Your mother and I barely knew each other when we married, and we built a good life together." "Mama loved you," Zara said quietly. "She told me so many times before the fever took her. She said you made her laugh even when times were hardest." Harrison looked away, and Zara knew she'd touched the grief that still lived in him 3 years after losing his wife. "William will provide for you. That's what matters. I won't be here forever, and I need to know you're taken care of." Before Zara could respond, the door opened, bringing in a gust of wind and the subject of their conversation. William Thornton cut an impressive figure at 31, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in clothes that spoke of money and taste. His dark hair was carefully groomed, his mustache precisely trimmed. Everything about him was controlled, calculated. "Harrison, Miss Ashford." He nodded to each of them, removing his hat. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Harrison said with forced cheer. "I was just discussing the summer social with Zara. I imagine you'll be attending." "Naturally. In fact, I came to extend a formal invitation to Miss Ashford to accompany me." William's blue eyes fixed on Zara with proprietary interest. "I thought we might announce our engagement that evening. Give the whole town something to celebrate." Zara's chest tightened. "Mr. Thornton, I haven't yet given you an answer to your proposal." "Haven't you?" His tone suggested this was a minor detail. "I assumed your answer would be yes. What rational woman would refuse such an offer?" There it was, that assumption that she was something to be acquired, that her agreement was merely a formality. Zara felt her spine stiffen. "I need more time to consider." William's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "How much time does a woman need to recognize an advantageous match?" "Your father understands the benefits." "My father isn't the one being asked to marry," Zara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. William replaced his hat with deliberate precision. "I see. Well, Miss Ashford, I am not a patient man, nor am I accustomed to waiting for what I want. I trust you'll come to the correct decision soon. Harrison, good day." He strode out, leaving tension thick in his wake. Her father sighed heavily. "Zara, you're making a mistake." "Maybe," she admitted. but it's mine to make." She left the store, needing air and space to think. The town bustled around her with afternoon activity. Miners just off their shift headed for the saloons, women carried baskets from the market, and children played in the alleys between buildings. Zara walked without destination, her mind churning. The truth was, she understood her father's concerns. As a woman without brothers, without family beyond her aging father, her future was precarious. William offered security, status, a life of comfort. On paper, he was perfect. In reality, the thought of spending her life with him felt like slowly suffocating. Her wandering took her to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land, and the mountains dominated the view. A small ranch occupied the valley just beyond Palisade's borders. She'd noticed it before, modest compared to William's vast holdings, but well-maintained. A simple house, a sturdy barn, corrals with good fencing. Horses grazed in the pasture, and she could see cattle on the hillside beyond. A man worked in the nearest corral, training a young horse on a lead line. Even from a distance, she could see the patience in his movements, the gentle way he worked with the skittish animal. He wore simple working clothes, a wide-brimmed hat shading his face, and moved with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his element. The horse reared suddenly, and Zara gasped, expecting disaster. But the man simply stepped aside, maintaining tension on the line, speaking words she couldn't hear. Within moments, the horse settled and he approached it slowly, hands extended. The horse allowed him near and he stroked its neck with obvious affection. "Beautiful, isn't he?" Zara startled at the voice beside her. An older woman had appeared, carrying a basket of eggs. She had kind eyes and silver threading through her dark hair. "The horse?" Zara asked. "Both, I suppose." The woman smiled. "Though I meant my nephew, he has a gift with animals, always has." "I'm Margaret Fletcher. That's my nephew, Austin Fletcher, working the colt." Zara Ashford. "My father owns the general store in town." "I know who you are, dear. And I know you're meant to marry William Thornton if the gossip is accurate." Zara's face heated. "The gossip moves faster than truth." "I haven't agreed to anything." Margaret's eyebrows rose with interest. "Haven't you? Well, that makes things more interesting, doesn't it?" She studied Zara with shrewd eyes. "Would you like to come in for tea? I just put the kettle on and I find I'm curious about you." Something about Margaret's directness appealed to Zara. "I'd like that, thank you." The Fletcher house was small but immaculately kept, with cheerful curtains and furniture that showed care despite its age. Margaret served tea in delicate cups that seemed out of place in the rough country setting. "These were my mother's," Margaret explained, seeing Zara's appreciation. "Brought them all the way from Virginia before the war. Sometimes I wonder why I bothered, but then I think, what's life without a few beautiful things?" "They're lovely," Zara said, cradling the cup carefully. "Austin's parents died when he was 14, Margaret said, shifting the conversation with surprising ease. "Cholera. Terrible thing. I was his father's sister, never married, so I took him in. Best decision I ever made. He's a good man, works harder than anyone I know. Built this place from almost nothing." Through the window, Zara could see Austin still working with the horse. "It's a nice ranch." "Modest," Margaret said frankly. "Especially compared to the Thornton spread. William owns thousands of acres, hundreds of head of cattle. Austin has 200 acres and maybe 50 head, plus the horses. He breeds and trains them, sells them to the army and to ranchers who need good working stock. Makes a decent living, but he'll never be wealthy." Zara wondered why Margaret was telling her this. "Honest work is nothing to be ashamed of." "No, it's not. But it's not what most women dream of, is it? Struggling to make ends meet, doing without luxuries, worrying about hard winters and drought years." Margaret's eyes were sharp. That's reality out here for most folks. William Thornton can offer you a very different life. You sound like my father. I'm sure I do. We're both old enough to remember harder times, to value security. Margaret refilled their cups, but I'm also old enough to know that security without happiness is its own kind of poverty. The door opened, and Austin Fletcher stepped inside, stopping short when he saw Zara. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a warm brown that held intelligence and something else, a kindness that William's calculating gaze had never shown. "Austin, this is Zara Ashford. Zara, my nephew Austin." He removed his hat quickly, and Zara noticed the calluses on his hands, the strength in his forearms. "Miss Ashford, pleasure to meet you, Mr. Fletcher." She found herself smiling. "I was admiring your work with the colt. You have a gentle hand." He looked genuinely pleased by the compliment. "Thank you, madam. He's a good horse, just needs patience and consistency. Most animals do." "Austin, why don't you wash up and join us? I made those molasses cookies you like." "Aunt Margaret, I'm sure Miss Ashford doesn't want to spend her afternoon listening to me talk about horses." "Actually," Zara surprised herself by saying, "I'd be interested to hear about your work. I don't know much about training horses." Something flickered in Austin's eyes, surprise perhaps, or pleasure. "Well, if you're certain, let me just clean up a bit." He disappeared into the back of the house, and Margaret gave Zara a knowing look. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more like William Thornton, proud, concerned with status." "But you're curious about things that don't profit you, and you look at my nephew like he's a person, not a servant." Margaret leaned forward slightly. "Be careful, dear. Palisade is a small town, and William Thornton is a powerful man. He doesn't like to lose." Before Zara could respond, Austin returned, his face and hands scrubbed, his hair dampened and combed back. He still wore his work clothes, but he'd changed to a clean shirt. They sat around Margaret's small table, and Zara found herself drawn into conversation with an ease that surprised her. Austin spoke about his horses with genuine passion, explaining his training methods, his breeding program. He wanted to develop a line known for intelligence and stamina, horses that could work all day and still have heart left at the end of it. "It's not just about breaking them to saddle," he explained, his hands moving expressively. "It's about building a partnership. A good horse will work for you because it wants to, not because it's afraid. That takes time and patience, but the result is worth it." "How long does it take?" Zara asked, genuinely curious. "Depends on the horse. Some are ready in a few months, others take a year or more. Can't rush it. Each animal is different, has its own personality and needs." He smiled, and it transformed his face, chasing away the seriousness. "Like people, I suppose." "Austin sold 3 horses to the cavalry last month," Margaret said proudly. "The officer said they were the finest he'd seen in years." Austin's cheeks colored slightly. He was being kind. He was being truthful. "You're too modest, nephew." The afternoon slipped away in easy conversation. Zara learned that Austin had served briefly in the cavalry himself, though he rarely spoke of it. He'd saved his pay and mustering out bonus, combined it with a small inheritance from his parents, and bought this land 6 years ago. He'd built everything himself, with Margaret's help and occasional hired labor. "It's not much," he admitted, glancing around the modest house, "but it's ours, clear and free. No bank owns a piece of it." "That's something to be proud of," Zara said. Their eyes met, and Zara felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. Austin looked away first, but not before she saw the same awareness reflected in his face. When she finally rose to leave, The sun was lowering toward the mountains. I should get back. Papa will worry. I'll walk you to town, Austin offered immediately. That's not necessary. It's nearly dark, and there's been talk of drifters on the road. I'd feel better knowing you got home safe. The concern in his voice was genuine, so different from William's possessive pronouncements. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. They walked in comfortable silence at first, the evening air cooling around them. Austin shortened his stride to match hers, close enough that she could feel his presence but careful not to presume. Your aunt is lovely, Zara said finally. She's the reason I'm who I am, Austin replied. When my parents died, I was angry at the world. She gave me structure, taught me that honest work heals wounds. She's everything good in my life. She spoke highly of you. He glanced at her, curious. Did she? What else did she say? Zara hesitated, then decided on honesty. She told me about your ranch, about how you built it from nothing, and she warned me that William Thornton doesn't like to lose. Austin's expression darkened. You're engaged to him. No, he proposed, but I haven't accepted. They'd reached the edge of town, where the first buildings cast long shadows across the road. Austin stopped, turning to face her. Miss Ashford, I know it's not my place to say this, but I'm going to anyway. William Thornton is a hard man. I've seen how he treats people he considers beneath him, how he runs his ranch. He's not cruel exactly, but he's cold. Everything is business to him, including marriage. You sound like you know him well. Well enough. He tried to buy my land last year, offered a fair price. When I refused, he had the bank call in a note on some equipment I'd purchased, tried to force me to sell. Austin's jaw tightened. I managed to pay it off, but it taught me what kind of man he is. Zara's stomach sank. I'm sorry, that's horrible. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what you'd be marrying into. But I also know. He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. I know I have no right to speak against your engagement. You barely know me, and Thornton can offer you things I never could. Security, comfort, a life without struggle. But not happiness. The words escaped before Zara could stop them. Austin looked at her with such intensity that her breath caught. I hope he can give you that too, Miss Ashford. You deserve it. He tipped his hat and walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing at the edge of town with her heart pounding and her thoughts in turmoil. The next week passed in a haze of confusion. Zara helped her father in the store, attended church on Sunday, and tried to ignore the growing pressure to accept William's proposal. The whole town seemed to expect it, and whispers followed her wherever she went. William himself called twice, bringing flowers and polite conversation, pressing gently but persistently for an answer. Each time, Zara deflected, buying time she wasn't sure how to use. On Thursday afternoon, when the store was quiet, she made a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. She told her father she needed fresh air and walked to the Fletcher ranch. Margaret answered her knock with a knowing smile. Hello, dear. Austin is working with the horses again if you'd like to watch. I'd like to help if he'll teach me. Margaret's smile widened. Oh, I like you. Go on, he's in the round pen behind the barn. Zara found Austin working with a different horse this time, a beautiful mare with a coat the color of dark honey. He looked up in surprise when he saw her. Miss Ashford, is everything all right? Everything's fine. I was hoping you might teach me a bit about horses, if you don't mind the intrusion. He studied her for a long moment, and she wondered what he saw. Finally, he smiled, that transformative expression that made her feel warm. I'd be happy to. Come on in, but move slowly. She's still getting used to people. The next hour was one of the best of Zara's life. Austin was a patient teacher, explaining how to read the horse's body language, how to move in ways that calmed rather than frightened. He stood close, guiding her hands, and she was intensely aware of his presence, his warmth, the clean scent of hay and leather that clung to him. "You're a natural," he said as the mare accepted an apple from Zara's palm, lips soft and careful. "See how she trusts you." "That's because you're calm, confident. Animals know when people are genuine." "Is that why you're good with them?" Zara asked, daring to meet his eyes. "Because you're genuine." Austin's expression grew serious. "I try to be. Lies and pretense don't sit well with me. Life's too short for games." "I agree." Zara took a breath, deciding to be as honest as he was. "I keep finding excuses to delay William's proposal because every time I try to imagine a life with him, I feel cold inside. But when I'm here, talking to you and your aunt, I feel alive." "I know that's foolish. We've only just met, but it's not foolish." Austin's voice was rough. "I feel it too. From the first moment I saw you standing outside the corral, I felt it. But Miss Ashford, Zara, I have to be honest with you. I can't compete with what William Thornton offers. This ranch, it's a good life, but it's simple. There are hard months when money is tight, when the weather threatens everything we've built. I can't give you fancy dresses or trips to Denver or a big house with servants." "I don't want those things," Zara said, and as she spoke, she realized it was true. "I want to wake up next to someone who sees me as a partner, not property. I want conversation and laughter and genuine connection. I want what your aunt described, a life that might not be wealthy but is rich in the things that matter." Austin reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and strong. "If you choose this, choose me, your life will be different than what you're used to. But I promise you, Zara, I'll give you everything I am. My work, my dedication, my respect, and my heart if you'll have it." Tears pricked Zara's eyes. "That's more than William ever offered with all his wealth." "Then you'll face your father, face the town, because they won't understand and Thornton won't take rejection well." "I know." Zara squeezed his hand. "But yes, I'll face them. For this, for us, I'll face anything." Austin pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek with surprising gentleness. "I've never been good with fancy words, but I need you to know something. I'm falling in love with you, Zara Ashford. Maybe I've been falling since that first afternoon. I know it's fast, I know it seems impossible, but it's true." "It's not impossible," Zara whispered, "because I'm falling too." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Zara felt something settle into place inside her, like a door closing on one life and opening on another. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't hear the horse approaching until a voice cut through the moment like a knife. How touching! They sprang apart to find William Thornton sitting astride a magnificent black stallion, his expression carved from ice. Behind him sat two of his ranch hands, witnesses to everything. "Mr. Thornton," Zara said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "this isn't how I wanted you to find out." "Find out what exactly?" "That you've been dallying with a man who lives in a shack while considering my proposal." William's voice was controlled, but fury blazed in his eyes. "Or that you're foolish enough to throw away the opportunity of a lifetime for someone who can barely keep his ranch afloat." Austin stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Zara. "That's enough, Thornton." "You don't speak to her like that." William laughed, a cold sound. "And what will you do, Fletcher? Challenge me? I own half this territory. One word from me and your horses won't sell, your credit will dry up, your ranch will wither. You're nothing." "He's twice the man you are," Zara said, anger replacing her initial shock. "You talk about ownership and control, but you don't know the first thing about respect or genuine partnership. I could never marry you, William. Even if Austin hadn't come into my life, I would have refused you." William's face hardened further. "Your father will hear about this. The whole town will know how his daughter threw herself at a poor rancher while engaged to me." "I was never engaged to you," Zara corrected. "I never accepted your proposal, no matter how much you assumed I would." "You'll regret this." William turned his horse sharply. "Both of you will regret this decision, I guarantee it." He galloped off, his men following, leaving dust and the echo of threats hanging in the air. Austin touched Zara's shoulder gently. "Are you all right?" "I am." "Are you worried about what he said, about him destroying your business?" "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned. William has power in this territory." Austin's jaw set with determination. "But I meant what I said. I'll give you everything I am, and I'll fight for us for this. Whatever comes." Margaret appeared from the house, having obviously witnessed the confrontation. "Well, that's torn it. Zara, dear, you'd better get home before William poisons your father's ear beyond repair. Austin, we need to think about protecting the ranch." "If William's serious about his threats, he is," Austin said grimly. "He doesn't make idle threats." Zara felt guilt wash through her. "This is my fault. If I'd refused him clearly from the start, this is William's fault for being a vindictive man who can't accept that people aren't his to purchase," Austin interrupted firmly. "Don't take his sins on yourself." "Austin's right," Margaret agreed, "but we do need to be practical. Zara, go talk to your father. Be honest with him. Austin and I will start figuring out how to weather whatever storm William kicks up." Zara wanted to stay, to help plan, but she knew Margaret was right. She needed to face her father before William's version of events reached him. She squeezed Austin's hand once more. "I'll come back tomorrow. We'll figure this out together." "Together," Austin agreed, and the promise in that single word gave her courage. The walk back to town felt longer than usual, each step heavy with dread. Sure enough, when she reached the store, her father was waiting, his face thunderous. Inside. Now. Zara followed him into the back room where they stored inventory, away from curious ears. Her father rounded on her immediately. "William Thornton just left here. He told me he found you in an embrace with Austin Fletcher, that you've been seeing him behind everyone's backs while accepting William's courtship. Tell me it's not true." "I never accepted William's courtship," Zara said quietly. "I've been honest about my uncertainty. But yes, I was with Austin today, and yes, I have feelings for him, deep feelings." "Feelings?" Her father's voice rose. "You're willing to throw away your future for feelings. Zara, do you understand what you're doing? William is offering you security, status, everything I've worked to provide for you. Everything you worked for, Papa, not me. This is my life, my choice. A choice to live in poverty with a man you barely know. Austin Fletcher is a good enough fellow, I suppose, but he has nothing. He'll never have anything. You'll work yourself to the bone helping him scratch out a living, and for what? Romance. Romance fades, Zara. Reality doesn't." "Mama didn't think you had nothing," Zara said softly. "When you married her, you were a clerk in a store you didn't even own. You were nobody by William Thornton's standards. But Mama loved you, believed in you. You built this life together. Why can't I have the same chance?" Her father's anger seemed to deflate slightly, replaced by weary frustration. "That was different." "How?" "Because you were the man. Because you got to choose your path while I'm supposed to accept what's chosen for me." Zara moved closer to her father, pleading for understanding. "Papa, I know you want to protect me. I know you're afraid of what will happen when you're gone. But marrying William won't protect me. It'll imprison me. I'd rather struggle with someone I love than live in luxury with someone who sees me as property. You've known this man for a week. I've known William for 2 years, and I know less about what's in his heart than I learned about Austin in a single afternoon." Zara took her father's weathered hands. "Give me a chance, Papa. Give us a chance. If you're right, if it's a mistake, at least it will be my mistake to make." Harrison Ashford looked at his daughter for a long moment, seeing perhaps not the child he wanted to protect but the woman she'd become. William said he'll make things difficult for Fletcher. He meant it, Zara. He'll use his influence to hurt that young man's business, maybe drive him under entirely. Can you live with that? We'll find a way through it, Zara said with more confidence than she felt. Together. Her father sighed heavily. You're as stubborn as your mother was. She had that same look in her eye when she'd made up her mind about something. I could never talk her out of anything once she was decided. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I suppose that's how I know you're serious about this. You have her determination. Does that mean you'll support me? Us? It means I won't stand in your way, though I think you're making this harder than it needs to be. But Zara, understand this. If you choose Austin Fletcher, you're choosing a difficult road. I'll help where I can, but I can't protect you from the consequences of defying William Thornton. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to trust that I know my own heart. Her father pulled her into a rough embrace. God help you, daughter. God help you both. The storm, William promised, broke within days. Buyers who'd regularly purchased Austin's horses suddenly had contracts elsewhere, often at suspiciously favorable rates. The bank, which had been friendly when Austin needed equipment loans, suddenly found reasons to deny credit. Merchants in town grew cautious about extending terms, afraid of offending Thornton. Through it all, Zara watched Austin face each setback with quiet determination. He didn't rage or complain, just adjusted his plans and worked harder. When regular buyers vanished, he traveled farther to find new markets. When the bank refused credit, he made do with what he had and worked on building his herd without expansion. Zara helped however she could. She kept the books for the ranch, her education making her quick with figures. She learned to help with the horses, first with simple tasks like feeding and grooming, then gradually with more complex work. Margaret taught her practical skills, cooking and preserving food, mending and making clothes last. It was hard work, harder than anything Zara had done before. Her hands developed calluses, her dresses wore at the hems, her skin tanned despite her bonnet. But she'd never been happier. There was satisfaction in the work, in seeing tangible results from her efforts. And there was Austin, steady and strong, who looked at her like she was precious even when she was dusty and exhausted. They courted properly, despite the circumstances, Austin asking her father's permission to call on her formally. Harrison gave his grudging blessing, and Austin came to Sunday dinners, sat in the store's back room during the evenings, talking with Zara while Harrison pretended not to listen. "You really love him," her father said one night after Austin had left. "I really do, Papa. He's a good man." "I can see that. Honest, hardworking. Your mother would have liked him." Harrison cleared his throat. "She would have been proud of you too, standing up for what you believe in even when it's hard." The words meant everything to Zara. "Thank you, Papa." 6 weeks after that fateful confrontation, Austin asked Zara to marry him properly, with a ring he'd saved for and worked extra hours to afford. It wasn't a large diamond like William might have offered, but it was beautiful in its simplicity, and Zara treasured it beyond measure. "I know the timing isn't ideal," Austin said, holding her hands in his. "The ranch is struggling with William's interference, and I can't promise you ease or comfort. But I love you, Zara. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes together. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Zara said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married on a warm day in early July in the small church in Palisade. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the grand affair William had probably imagined. Zara wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her. Austin wore his best suit, carefully brushed and pressed. The church wasn't full. Some townspeople stayed away, afraid of William's disapproval or believing the gossip he'd spread about Zara's fickleness and Austin's unworthiness. But the people who mattered were there. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Margaret sat in the front pew, beaming with joy. A few of Austin's friends from his cavalry days had traveled to attend, along with some neighboring ranchers who respected his work. When Austin looked at her as she approached, the love in his eyes made Zara's breath catch. This was right, she knew it bone deep. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. I, Austin Fletcher, take you, Zara Ashford, to be my wife. To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. The words were traditional, but Austin spoke them with such conviction that they became new, a promise just for them. When it was Zara's turn, she looked into his eyes and meant every word with her whole heart. The reception was held at the Fletcher ranch, tables set up in the yard, food contributed by friends and family. It was modest compared to what William's wealth could have provided, but it was filled with genuine joy and celebration. People danced to fiddle music, children ran between the tables, and laughter filled the air. Harrison approached Zara as she stood watching the festivities, Austin's arm around her waist. "Your mother would have loved this," he said quietly. "She always said the best parties were the ones where people came because they wanted to, not because they felt obliged." "Thank you for being here, Papa. It means everything. Where else would I be? You're my daughter, and despite my worries, I can see that Fletcher makes you happy. That's what your mother would have wanted for you." He shook Austin's hand firmly. "You take care of her, son. She's precious cargo." "I will, sir. I promise you that." As the sun set and the party continued, Austin drew Zara away from the crowd, walking with her to the edge of the property where they could see the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Zara leaned into him, feeling safe and cherished. "Not a single one. You. Only that I didn't meet you sooner so we could have had more time together." Austin turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I meant what I said in my vows, Zara. Everything I am, everything I have, it's yours. We'll build a good life together. It might not be easy, but it'll be ours." "That's all I want," Zara said, reaching up to touch his face. "You're all I want." He kissed her as the first stars appeared overhead, and Zara felt the truth of her choice settle into her bones. This was where she belonged, with this man. In this life they would build together. The early months of marriage brought adjustments and challenges. Zara moved into the Fletcher house, sharing space with Margaret until Austin could complete an addition he was building. The three of them developed rhythms of living together, sharing work and meals, supporting each other through the difficulties William's vendetta continued to create. William himself maintained his campaign of economic pressure. He'd succeeded in cutting off most of Austin's traditional buyers, forcing him to travel extensively to sell his horses. The trips took Austin away for days at a time, leaving Zara and Margaret to manage the ranch. Zara hated his absences but never complained. She knew Austin struggled with leaving her, saw it in the reluctant way he'd saddle up, the way he'd hold her extra close before departing. "I'll be back as soon as I can," he'd promise. 4 days, maybe 5. "We'll be fine," Zara assured him. "Be safe, and don't worry about us." During one of these absences, William Thornton himself appeared at the ranch. Zara was working in the garden when she heard the horse approach. She stood, wiping dirt from her hands as William dismounted. He looked the same, impeccably dressed and groomed, but there was something harder in his expression now. "Mrs. Fletcher, how domestic you look." Zara refused to be baited. "Mr. Thornton, What brings you here? Curiosity, perhaps. I wanted to see if you were happy with your choice. He surveyed the modest house, the small garden, the simple ranch. Is this really what you wanted, this struggling existence when you could have had everything? I have everything I want, Zara said firmly. A husband who loves and respects me, meaningful work, a life I'm building with my own hands. Yes, this is what I wanted. William's expression flickered with something that might have been regret or anger. It was hard to tell. I could have made you happy, Zara. I would have tried. No, you wouldn't have. Because you never saw me as a person, William. I was just another acquisition, something to own and display. You wanted a wife who would enhance your status and give you heirs. You didn't want a partner. And Fletcher does. A man who leaves you here to struggle while he chases buyers across 3 territories. A man who works tirelessly to build our future, yes. He doesn't leave me here, William. We're in this together. Every decision, every challenge, we face it as partners. That's what you never understood. Margaret emerged from the house, a rifle cradled casually in her arms. Mr. Thornton, I believe you've said what you came to say. Time for you to move along. William looked at the rifle, then at Margaret's determined expression, and something like amusement crossed his face. The fierce protector. Very well, I'll leave. But understand this, both of you. I don't forget slights, and I don't stop until I get what I want. One way or another, Fletcher will lose everything. Maybe then you'll understand what you threw away, Zara. He mounted and rode off, leaving Zara shaken despite her brave words. Don't let him rattle you, Margaret said, lowering the rifle. He's trying to scare you, make you doubt your choice. I don't doubt Austin, Zara said. I just hate that loving me has cost him so much. Loving you has given him everything, Margaret corrected gently. I've known that boy since he was 14, and I've never seen him as happy as he's been these past months. Yes, times are hard, but you face them together. That's worth more than all of William Thornton's money. When Austin returned 3 days later, having successfully sold 4 horses to a rancher in Wyoming, Zara told him about William's visit. She watched anger and concern war in his expression. I don't like him coming here when I'm gone, Austin said. I don't trust him. Margaret had a rifle and I can handle myself. But Austin, he said he won't stop until you've lost everything. What if he succeeds? What if his vendetta destroys the ranch? Austin pulled her close, his embrace strong and reassuring. Then we'll start over. We'll find another way. Zara, I've lost things before. I lost my parents, my childhood home, my certainty about the world. I survived because I had Aunt Margaret and because I learned that what matters isn't what you have but who you are and who you're with. As long as I have you, as long as we're together, I haven't lost anything important. Zara held him tightly, drawing strength from his certainty. I love you so much. I love you too, more than I knew it was possible to love someone. He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. But I think it's time we stopped just reacting to William's moves and started making some of our own. Over the next weeks, Austin implemented a new strategy. Instead of trying to compete in markets William controlled, he focused on building relationships with smaller ranchers and the cavalry posts that valued quality over politics. He also began breeding for a specific type of horse, combining stamina with intelligence in ways that set his stock apart. It was slow work, requiring patience and faith, but gradually it began to pay off. Word spread about Fletcher horses, their reliability and temperament. Buyers started seeking Austin out, willing to pay premium prices for animals they could trust. Zara continued managing the books and discovered she had a talent for finding efficiencies, for stretching resources further. Between her management and Austin's skill with horses, the ranch began to stabilize despite William's interference. Winter came early that year, snow falling in October and continuing through November. The cold tested everything they'd built, forcing them to dig deep into reserves of both resources and resilience. There were nights when Zara lay awake worrying about whether the hay would last, whether the cattle would survive the harsh conditions. But there were also moments of profound beauty. Christmas morning, Austin gave her a music box he'd found in Denver, delicate and lovely. When he wound it, a soft melody filled their bedroom. "I know it's not practical," he said, almost apologetically, "but I saw it and thought of you, thought you should have something beautiful that serves no purpose except to make you smile." Zara had cried then, not from sadness but from the overwhelming love she felt for this man who worked himself to exhaustion but still thought about bringing her joy. "It's perfect. You're perfect." "Far from it," Austin said, pulling her into his arms, "but I try to be worthy of you." "You already are. You always have been." They made love slowly that morning, the music box melody providing a soft soundtrack, snow falling outside their window. Afterward, lying in Austin's arms, Zara felt such contentment that she couldn't imagine any other life. "I have news," she said softly. Austin's hand, which had been tracing patterns on her shoulder, stilled. "What kind of news?" "The good kind. The wonderful kind." She turned to look at him. "I'm pregnant, Austin. We're going to have a baby." The joy that flooded his face was everything she'd hoped for. He sat up, pulling her with him, his hands gentle on her face. "Truly, you're certain?" "As certain as I can be. I think the baby will come in early summer." Austin kissed her, tender and reverent. "A baby, our baby." "Zara, his voice broke with emotion. "I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be a wonderful father," Zara said, wiping tears from his cheeks. "Patient and kind, just like you are with everything you love." They spent the rest of that Christmas day planning and dreaming, talking about the future with new urgency. The baby made everything more real, more important. They weren't just building a life for themselves anymore, but for the family they were creating. Margaret was delighted by the news, immediately beginning to knit small clothes and plan for the changes a baby would bring. Harrison, when they told him, looked overwhelmed but pleased. "A grandchild," he said wonderingly. "Your mother would have been so happy." He gripped Austin's hand firmly. "You take good care of them both, you hear, always," Austin promised. The winter months passed, with Zara's pregnancy progressing well despite the harsh conditions. Austin became even more protective, insisting she not overwork, though Zara continued helping with the ranch as much as she could. In February, Margaret fell ill with a fever that worried them all. For 3 days she burned with heat while Zara tended her constantly, applying cool cloths and coaxing her to drink broth. On the 4th day, the fever broke, leaving Margaret weak but recovering. "You're a good nurse," Margaret told Zara during her convalescence. "You'll be a wonderful mother." "I learned from watching you," Zara said, adjusting the blankets around Margaret. "The way you cared for Austin when he was young, the way you care for all of us now." "I never had children of my own," Margaret said quietly. "The man I loved died in the war before we could marry. I thought my life would be lonely after that, but then Austin came to me, and I found purpose again. Now I have you too, and soon a baby to spoil. Life has a way of giving us what we need, even if it's not what we originally planned." Spring arrived with dramatic swiftness, snow melting in rushing streams, the valley exploding into green. Austin's mares began foaling, producing strong, healthy colts and fillies that represented the future of his breeding program. Despite William's continued interference, the ranch was succeeding through sheer determination and quality. In late May, Zara's labor began on a warm afternoon while she was hanging laundry. The first contraction took her by surprise, a tightening across her belly that stole her breath. By the time Austin found her, she was gripping the fence post, breathing through another wave. "It's time," she said, seeing panic flash across his face. Austin swept into action, getting her into the house, sending for the doctor in town, helping Margaret prepare. The labor was long, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Austin stayed by Zara's side the entire time, letting her grip his hands, murmuring encouragement, wiping sweat from her face. When their son finally entered the world in the early morning light, squalling and red-faced, Austin cried openly, "A boy! We have a son!" Zara held their baby, exhausted but elated, watching Austin's face as he looked at their child for the first time. "What should we name him?" They discussed names but never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Austin said, "Harrison, after your father, if that's all right with you. Harrison Austin Fletcher." "It's perfect," Zara whispered. When her father came to meet his grandson later that day, he held the baby with shaking hands, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He's beautiful, perfect. Thank you for naming him after me." "You're his grandfather," Zara said. "It's right that he carries your name." Those early weeks with baby Harrison were simultaneously wonderful and exhausting. Zara had never been so tired, but she'd also never felt such profound love. Watching Austin with their son, seeing his gentleness and patience, made her fall in love with him all over again. Austin adjusted his work schedule to be close to the house, taking on the majority of night feedings so Zara could rest. They moved through the days in a haze of diaper changes and feedings and stolen moments of sleep, but neither would have traded it for anything. Summer brought unexpected good fortune. A cavalry colonel, impressed by the horses Austin had sold to various posts, arrived with an offer for a substantial contract. The Army wanted Fletcher horses exclusively for a new mounted unit, willing to pay premium prices for guaranteed quality. "This could change everything," Austin told Zara that night, careful not to wake the sleeping baby in her arms. "With this contract, we'd have stable income for the next 3 years. We could expand, hire help, build the house bigger like we've talked about." "What about William? Won't he try to interfere?" "He can try, but this is a federal contract, and the colonel made it clear he's choosing our horses on merit, not politics. William's influence doesn't extend to the U.S. Army." The contract did indeed change their fortunes. For the first time since their marriage, they had financial security. Austin hired 2 ranch hands, reducing his workload. They began construction on additions to the house, creating more space for their growing family. Through it all, William Thornton remained a presence in their lives, though his active interference had lessened. Zara occasionally saw him in town, always impeccably dressed, always alone. Once, their eyes met across the street, and she saw something in his expression that might have been regret. But he nodded curtly and moved on, and she felt only relief that that chapter of her life was firmly closed. Fall arrived with spectacular color, the aspens turning gold against the evergreens. Harrison was 4 months old, a happy baby who was beginning to smile and coo. Zara and Austin settled into the rhythms of family life, finding joy in simple moments. One evening, after putting Harrison to bed, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Austin's arm was around Zara's shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. "Are you happy?" Austin asked softly. Zara turned to look at him, this man who had offered her everything he was when others offered wealth and status. His face was weathered from sun and wind, his hands permanently calloused from work, but his eyes held such love that it took her breath away. "I'm happier than I ever imagined possible," she said honestly. "This life, our family, this ranch we're building together, it's everything I didn't know I wanted." No regrets about what you gave up. The ease William could have provided. Austin Fletcher, are you really asking me that after a year and a half of marriage and a baby? Zara shook her head with fond exasperation. I gave up nothing that mattered. Everything important, everything real, everything I value, it's right here with you. Austin kissed her, sweet and slow. I love you, Zara, more every day if that's possible. It's possible, she assured him. I know because I feel the same way. As winter approached again, the Fletcher ranch was thriving. The Army contract ensured steady income. Austin's breeding program was gaining recognition, and their small family was healthy and happy. Margaret, fully recovered from her illness, doted on baby Harrison with shameless favoritism. Harrison Ashford closed his store in December, deciding at 60 to finally retire. I'm getting too old for this, he told Zara. I'd rather spend time with my grandson than behind a counter. He sold the store to a young couple from Denver and moved into a small house near the ranch. Having him close brought Zara joy. Watching her father relax for the first time in years, seeing him light up when Harrison reached for him with chubby baby hands. On a quiet evening in early January, snow falling softly outside, Zara sat in the rocking chair Austin had made for her, nursing Harrison while Austin added wood to the fire. Margaret had gone to bed early, and her father was visiting friends in town. It was just the three of them, warm and safe while winter raged outside. I was thinking, Austin said, settling on the floor near her chair. Maybe in the spring we could take a trip to Denver. Let you see the city, buy some nice things, stay in a real hotel for a few nights. We can afford it now, and you deserve some luxury after everything you've sacrificed. Zara smiled down at him. That sounds wonderful, but Austin, you have to understand something. I didn't sacrifice anything. I chose this life, chose you, and I'd make the same choice again every single day. You keep acting like I gave up something precious, but the truth is, I gave up something empty for something real. Still, I want to give you nice things sometimes. Want you to know that choosing me doesn't mean choosing hardship forever. I know that. I see how hard you work, how the ranch is growing. But the nice things, the luxury, they're not what makes me happy. This does. She gestured around the simple room at their baby at him. Coming home to you at the end of the day, watching you with our son, building something together. That's what I value. Austin reached up to take her free hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky, Zara corrected. We found each other at exactly the right time, even though it seemed impossible. That night, after Harrison was asleep in his cradle and they lay together in their bed, Austin held Zara close and whispered plans and dreams for their future. More children, maybe, expanding the ranch further, growing old together, watching their family grow. I meant what I said when I proposed, Austin murmured into her hair. I'd give you everything I am. I'm still keeping that promise. You've given me more than you know, Zara said. You've given me partnership and respect, love and purpose. You've given me a life that's mine, that I chose, not one that was chosen for me. You've given me everything that matters. As Zara drifted toward sleep, safe in Austin's arms, she thought about the path that had brought her here. A year and a half ago, she'd been expected to marry William Thornton, to choose wealth and status over her own heart. Everyone had thought she was foolish to refuse, to choose an uncertain future with a struggling rancher instead. But lying here now, with her husband's steady heartbeat beneath her ear and her baby sleeping nearby, Zara knew she'd made the only choice she could. Austin had offered less in material terms, but he'd given her everything that truly mattered. He'd given her himself, wholly and completely, and built a life with her rather than for her. The years that followed proved the wisdom of her choice. The ranch continued to prosper, Austin's reputation for quality horses spreading throughout the territory. They had 3 more children over the next 8 years, 2 daughters and another son, filling their expanded house with noise and laughter and love. Harrison Ashford lived to see all his grandchildren, passing peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72. At his funeral, Zara spoke about how he'd ultimately supported her choice, even when he didn't understand it, trusting her to know her own heart. Margaret remained a vital part of their family until her death at 85, having lived to see great-grandchildren, and the ranch grow into one of the most respected breeding operations in Colorado. She died surrounded by family, content with the life she'd built. William Thornton eventually married, a society woman from Denver who fit his image perfectly. Zara saw them occasionally at territorial events, as the ranch's success brought social invitations. William was always coldly polite, his wife equally formal. Looking at them, Zara felt only gratitude that she'd escaped that fate. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Austin surprised Zara with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with trusted friends and spent 2 weeks exploring the city, staying in fine hotels, eating in elegant restaurants, seeing sights Zara had only read about. "This is wonderful," Zara said as they watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. "But I'm ready to go home." Austin laughed, pulling her close. "Missing the ranch, missing our life. This is beautiful, but it's not us. We're mountain people, ranch people. I want to be home with our children in our bed, living our real life." "Even after 20 years, you still choose the ranch over luxury." "I choose you, Austin. I choose us. That's what I've always chosen." They returned home to chaos and joy, their children mobbing them with hugs and stories, the ranch hands reporting on everything that had happened in their absence. That night, in their own bed with familiar mountains outside their window, Zara felt peace settle over her. "Thank you for the trip," she said to Austin. "Thank you for always choosing this life, choosing me even when better options appeared." There were never better options. Only you, only us. Only this. Their children grew and eventually began families of their own. Young Harrison took over the ranch's operations, showing his father's skill with horses and his mother's head for business. The daughters married well, choosing partners based on love rather than advantage, following their mother's example. The youngest son became a veterinarian, combining book learning with practical ranch knowledge. As Austin and Zara grew older, they spent more time on the porch Austin had built, watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had played. The ranch had expanded significantly over the decades, employing dozens of hands, shipping horses across the country. They'd achieved a level of success and respect that rivaled William Thornton's holdings, but they'd done it together, as partners. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you'd married William?" Austin asked one evening, both of them well into their 60s now, his hair silver and her face lined but their love as strong as ever. "Sometimes," Zara admitted. "I imagine I'd have had a big house and fancy things, social position. Maybe children, though I don't think William would have been an involved father, but I also imagine I'd have been lonely, isolated, playing a role rather than living authentically." "Any regrets?" Austin Fletcher, after 40-some years of marriage, "are you still asking me that?" Zara shook her head with affectionate exasperation. "My only regret is that we didn't meet sooner, so I could have loved you longer." Austin took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "I've been thinking about what I said when I proposed. I told you I couldn't give you what William offered, but I'd give you everything I was. I remember. It's why I said yes. Looking back now, I realize I gave you less in some ways. Harder work, more struggle, less luxury. But I also gave you more. partnership, respect, genuine love. A life we built together rather than one I built for you. You gave me exactly what I needed, Zara said firmly. Everything I wanted, even things I didn't know I wanted. You gave me purpose and meaning. You gave me a family I'm proud of. You gave me 50 years of love and dedication. That's not less, Austin. That's everything. He leaned over to kiss her, and even after all these years, Zara felt that flutter in her chest, that certainty that this was right. I love you, Zara Fletcher. I've loved you since the day you showed up at my corral, curious about horses and brave enough to choose an uncertain future over a gilded cage. I love you too, Austin. You're the best choice I ever made. As the sun set behind the mountains they'd called home for so long, Zara reflected on the path her life had taken. She'd been meant for William Thornton in everyone's eyes, the perfect match on paper. But she'd chosen Austin Fletcher, who'd offered less in material terms but given her everything that truly mattered. He'd given her his work, his dedication, his respect. He'd given her partnership and purpose, love and loyalty. He'd given her a life that was authentically hers, built through her own choices and efforts. He'd given her children who knew their own worth, a ranch that stood as testament to what hard work and integrity could achieve, and 50 years of being truly seen and valued. William Thornton could have given her wealth and status. Austin Fletcher had given her everything he was, and in doing so, had given her everything she needed. The generations that followed told the story of Austin and Zara Fletcher with admiration. The great-grandchildren who inherited the ranch understood that it was built on more than just hard work and skill with horses. It was built on a choice their great-grandmother had made to follow her heart rather than practical expectations, and on their great-grandfather's promise to give her everything he was. The ranch became known not just for quality horses, but for treating people fairly, for valuing integrity over profit, for being a place where honest work was respected and relationships mattered more than status. Those values, established by Austin and Zara, became the foundation that allowed the ranch to thrive through generations. When Austin passed away at 78, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, his last words were to Zara. Thank you for choosing me, for seeing past what I couldn't give you to what I could, for building this life with me. Zara held his hand as he slipped away, her heart breaking even as she felt gratitude for the extraordinary life they'd shared. Thank you for giving me everything you were. It was more than enough. It was everything. She lived another 5 years, active and engaged with her family until the end. On quiet evenings, she'd sit on the porch Austin had built and remember their life together. The struggles and the triumphs, the hard years and the prosperous ones, the children they'd raised and the love they'd shared. People in Palisade still talked about Zara Ashford, who'd refused William Thornton's wealth to marry Austin Fletcher. Some thought she'd been foolish, throwing away security for romance. But those who knew the family, who saw what they built together, understood that she'd made the wisest choice possible. She'd chosen a man who offered less in material terms but gave her everything in the ways that truly mattered. And in doing so, she'd built a life rich beyond measure, filled with love and purpose and genuine partnership. When Zara passed away peacefully in her sleep at 83, her funeral was attended by hundreds. The church couldn't hold everyone who came to pay respects to the woman who'd helped build one of Colorado's most respected ranches and raised a family known for integrity and kindness. Young Harrison, now in his 60s himself, spoke at her funeral about the legacy his parents had created. My mother chose love over luxury, partnership over possession. My father promised to give her everything he was, and he kept that promise every day of their marriage. Together, they showed us that true wealth isn't measured in money or land, but in the quality of our relationships and the integrity of our choices. They gave us everything that matters. The Fletcher Ranch continued to thrive, each generation adding to what Austin and Zara had started. The house they'd expanded together remained the heart of operations. And in the master bedroom, the music box Austin had given Zara that first Christmas sat on a shelf, carefully maintained and occasionally wound to play its gentle melody. The story of Austin and Zara became part of Palisade's history, told and retold as an example of choosing wisely, of understanding what truly matters. It reminded people that the best marriages aren't built on what one person can provide, but on what both people can create together. Austin had been right when he'd told Zara he couldn't compete with what William Thornton offered. He couldn't give her vast wealth or social prestige, a mansion or a life of ease. But he'd given her something infinitely more valuable. He'd given her respect and partnership, love and dedication. He'd given her a life built on shared values and genuine connection. He'd given her everything he was, and in doing so, had given her everything she needed to build an extraordinary life. And Zara, brave enough to choose her heart over practical expectations, had recognized that what Austin offered was worth more than all of William Thornton's wealth. She'd understood that true richness comes from love freely given and received, from partnership and purpose, from building something meaningful together. Their story became a testament to the power of choosing wisely, of recognizing that the person who offers less in material terms might be offering everything that truly matters. It reminded generations that followed that the best life isn't the easiest or most luxurious, but the one built on authentic love and shared purpose. In the end, Austin Fletcher had offered less in wealth, but given Zara Ashford everything she needed. And she, in choosing him, had found everything she never knew she wanted. Together, they'd built a legacy that lasted far beyond their years, proving that when someone promises to give you everything they are, that can be worth more than all the riches in the world.